trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, like a bunch of people that Nick also does well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
It's not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only 3 things he mentioned in a sentence: a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean,
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
and now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to episode 85 of the Politics Show. Thank you for joining me. It has been a tough week. I wasn't even planning on doing a show today, but I have to finish this 2024 recap. As we get into the new year, I'm going to start doing things a little bit better, a little bit more streamlined, be a little bit more, put out content, I think, that's a little bit more concise, I guess is the word I would like to use. But I recently posted this video called The Rise and Fall of Late Night Television. And what inspired it was a picture that was going around of, all the major late night hosts, Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and John Oliver, which John Oliver is technically not a late night host really, but he was on The Daily Show. And they're like basically the shit lib, brunch lib voices of America, so to speak. And so it got me thinking like, oh, late night TV is dead. Why not kind of dig into the genesis of it, the origins of it, and, go through each of these guys' careers. So I did that. You don't have to look at my ugly mug. If you watch it, it's all stock video and photos. And so a couple interesting things about that before we move into today's news. One of the first things I realized going into the weeds on that is that these late night shows have always been like corporate sponsored entities. Like today it's Pfizer, but back in the day it was Texaco and it was Pepsodent. Like one of the first late night talk shows was Bob Hope, the Pepsodent. It was literally called the Pepsodent Show. And then Milton Berle hosted one called like the Texaco Star Theater or something like that. And I put a clip in there of it. Like it's literally just like a big advertisement. So these shows have always been like corporate controlled kind of propaganda tools from their inception. And today is obviously no different. But there was a period in late night where there was some kind of like free thought and I guess what's the word? Rebellion, maybe, just edginess. And you saw that with Jack Parr. And I really want to do a detailed piece on the whole Jack Parr thing because it was basically, I think what basically happened, to sum it up, is the network pulled one of his jokes before he aired, and he got so pissed off about it that he literally walked off the air during a broadcast and left his co-host to handle the duties. Hugh Downs, who later went on to be like a voiceover guy on a bunch of game shows and stuff like that. That aside, then you had people like kind of Conan was never really like super edgy, but he was always like a little bit outside the mainstream. And then Colbert and Jon Stewart kind of came along. And then in the kind of like era of Trump, you have like Colbert becomes this complete total brunch lib shithead. And then you have Jimmy Kimmel, who goes from the Man Show, this like totally edgy, like offensive, like men's comedy thing, to like being, arguably the next I want to say Johnny Carson, but I think even Johnny Carson was much edgier than these guys. These guys actually suck dick to power. Jimmy Kimmel has Joe Biden on his show. Stephen Colbert has Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on his show, and they totally lick the ass of the powerful. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting kind of like, just exercise in the trajectory of late night television, where it came from, where it's going. And, that picture kind of inspired that. So before we get into our 2024 recap, one of the things I didn't do last time is there's so much going on. And I figured what I would do today is just share what I was looking at this morning in my Twitter feed, because both Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore shared this clip. So it seemed like it was worth checking out. So anyway, this is Ian Carroll. Props to Ian Carroll. Good day when Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore share your content. But let's just watch this, because this is kind of what's going on in the mainstream dialogue right now, and it's interesting stuff.
So the Tesla Cybertruck car bombing in Las Vegas has turned into the craziest reverse psyop story ever. And it's still developing, but I'm going to run through all of the evidence in all directions that I have found so far. So hopefully it's easy to kind of pick up where we're at right now and see what comes next. First thing, super iconic, not an accident. But the question is, not an accident, why? And who's actually behind it? Because the media is pinning everything on Matthew Allen Livelsberger because they found his passport and his ID and a bunch of stuff of his in the car. Though the car blew up, passports always survive. And he's an active duty Green Beret that's been stationed mostly out of Germany and Colorado. And the Green Beret community is digging into this deep and getting sources. And there's so much that's not adding up. And then yesterday, I think it was, the plot super duper thickened when the Sean Ryan show had this whole expose on this whistleblower scenario where he had Sam Shoemate on, who had apparently...
Okay, just to pause here for a second. All my conservative friends sent me this Sean Ryan clip and were like, you gotta see this, which means it's kind of working. They're kind of buying this. But let me get to the crux of Ian's argument here, and we'll talk about it.
Apparently gotten an email from this Green Beret dude the day before the bombing. And the email is crazy spicy, but it's a little suspicious. If you haven't seen the Sean Ryan Show podcast episode yet, you should watch at least the first 30 to 45 minutes. Put it on 2x speed. You should not believe everything that is said at face value. Remember, both these guys are military intelligence assets, former and current. This is the alleged email that Mr. Shoemate received. But notice that there are spell check red squigglies in here. And there's a cursor. And we've learned this before. This is not how an email appears when it is received in your inbox. This is how an email appears when you're typing it. But this is what the Sean Ryan Show put out as the email that was received, allegedly. And it alleges that the drones over the East Coast are Chinese tech and that they could bomb the White House at any minute. And it's
there it is.
Basically, it alleges that World War III is about to happen between the U.S. and China, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And he's trying to be a whistleblower to stop it. But
see, the drone thing is interesting because it reminded me of the Chinese spy balloon incident where it was like, oh, spy balloons taking pictures of all of our stuff. No, China's spying on us. It's like, yo, are you really that dumb? China has backdoors in the chips in your phones. They probably know everything they need to know at this point. But let's keep going.
If this email is real, it's the perfect food for the military-industrial complex and for World War III warmongering. But it gets weirder. So the Las Vegas officials and the FBI, who are totally trustworthy, have been assessing the scene. Hey, Gigi, don't do that. Stay over there. That's where they found the passport. They also found an incinerated Desert Eagle, which apparently he used to shoot himself in the head before the explosion. It was dropped on the floor right in between his feet in the driver's seat. And if you know any...
My dad owned a Desert Eagle. I have shot a Desert Eagle. The kickback on those fucking guns is insane.
Thinking about how powerful these guns are, and you imagine shooting yourself in the head with it and then it dropping straight down instead of just flying into the not to mention that no one has reported any report from a gunshot in the car at the scene at the time, and that is the most powerful handgun you can buy. A whole conspiracy on this thread is Teslas can drive themselves, and I don't know if anyone's ever tested the self-driving because it'll watch
for
you,
entertainment purposes only.
Upwards, it'll tell you to look, or it'll stop the self-driving, so you can't just look down at your phone or close your eyes and go to sleep. But has anyone ever tried it with a dead body that has its eyes open? Because that is probably possible. It's unclear because allegedly the remains of the person found in the front seat, though charred, burnt beyond recognition, the DNA did not match the DNA of this guy's recent child. Apparently his wife just broke up with him and they were trying to paint that as he's angry. It's Green Berets get divorces all the time. Maybe the kid wasn't his kid. I think it's more likely that the body wasn't his body. Because again, in the email that was allegedly sent by him, theoretically, it's very clear that he's not planning to kill himself. He's planning to escape to Mexico and to do this whole thing in order to bring attention to this and to whistleblow and to be taken seriously and to get this out to as much news and publicity as possible and then escape to Mexico. He says it 2 different times in this email. The trunk was loaded up with all these crazy fireworks, and there was some gas cans in the cab that caused the explosion to So a little unclear. But it seems like the explosion was intended to not cause a bunch of death, but just to cause a scene. Like he chose a Cybertruck, which is bulletproof, like the worst car to build a car bomb in. And then he filled it with fireworks instead of like he's a Green Beret. He could have built a real high like power IED that could have blown the building up, theoretically. And then he says in the letter that he's trying to keep a low profile because he's being followed and they attempted to abduct him, but also that he's trying to keep a high profile because they know he has this IED, this car bomb rigged up. And so he got a Cybertruck, which is like, why would you get a Cybertruck? The police have had no trouble tracking the Cybertruck, both in Las Vegas on CCTV footage and on its supercharger route across the country. The police said that they have tracked the purchase of the firearm, specifically the Desert Eagle, back in Colorado. There's a 3-day wait on purchasing a firearm in Colorado, so he had to have initiated the purchase 3 days before leaving Colorado to come to Las Vegas for this event. But then in the email, he gives like as confirmation that he is who he says he is. First off, I'm not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. Well, people verified. People pulled his vehicle records, and actually he has never owned a 1996, was it? Ford Mustang, or 2006 Ford Mustang, but his first car was a Ford Mustang.
That is so odd that the proof is wrong. The thing he says, hey, just to prove I am legit, here's a proof, and then the proof is wrong.
Totally different year. So it's not really like, could be that because it's 30 years ago, it's his own car 20 years ago and he just forgot the year. It could be like, why would you put the wrong verification in? Like, you'd think if it was someone else faking the letter, they would get the right verification because they wanted to get verified. You think if it was him, like maybe he misremembered it, maybe it's an intentional misverification. People are like, oh, maybe it was in his parents' name because everyone's first cars are in their parents' name. Well, people pulled his parents' car records too. Check out Landry 22 if you want to see those on X. But then the Las Vegas police, the officials, released like manifestos that they found on his phone, which was like charred to oblivion. But they found these manifestos that like this one is based.
It's funny too, and I don't know if Ian mentions this, but they found manifestos on this guy's phone, but the Trump shooter from the summer, nothing. No, we know nothing about that guy. Just completely forget about that kid and move on with your life. In fact, there was this on that guy. We know more about that guy. He has a motive because he's a Ukraine hack. The whole thing is insane. And, I'll shut up for a second. But to me, it's the dying gasp of the control apparatus. They're just like, I'm melting. All these random stories, all this shit that is just, it's mind-bending if you, I guess, follow like the Ouija thing still. Like that's completely out of this blew that completely out of the news. Interesting.
Basically like, yo, all military personnel go and take the Capitol right now. It's like really unhinged and retarded. And the other one, like, it's just like screenshot and read if you want. Like the other one is just so weird. Then they released like video from his Tesla Cybertruck at the supercharge station that they said was in Las Vegas, but the internet has sleuthed around and pretty much confirmed that actually that was not in Las Vegas. It was in Arizona because there's a Carl's Jr. Next to the supercharge station. They were looking for photos where there's a supercharge station and a Carl's Jr. and it's in Kingman, Arizona, which is that stop right there before getting to Las Vegas. Plus the Green Beret chatter on YouTube and X and everything.
Fun side note, as someone who drives an electric car and has done trips in it, I have stopped at the supercharge station in Kingman, Arizona.
Everyone in the Green Beret and like special forces communities that are commenting on this saying it does not line up at all. Like he did not have the expertise to understand this kind of stuff about drones. He did not have the clearance. He wasn't even like stationed in the places where they said he was stationed. It's all very sus. Not to mention that he was like a TV star with Tim Kennedy like 10 years ago on some like special forces like game show, TV show, whole other funny rabbit hole. But a bunch of guys know this guy. Like a bunch of people on the internet right now have done operations and missions with him or trained with him or been stationed with him. So there's a lot floating around and I don't have any answers. I don't know what's going on. But one thing that we can all agree on is that if the evidence starts pointing towards a war with China or a war with Iran or a war with Russia, it's probably the deep state setting you up for that war. And if I had to guess right now, here's what I would guess was going on. The military-industrial complex is learning as we go, and they are wise to the way this world works. And seeing how X has debunked all their other bullshit this last year, I'd bet right now it looks like they decided, what if we need to start our psyops using the decentralized media space as our patsy, as our pipeline of information to deliver the information so that the internet thinks it's real. So the internet thinks it's coming from inside the house, right? And so they concoct a situation in which a known and trusted and verified internet sleuth, this dude on Instagram, who is like a military whistleblower, like hub. He's like the dude for military whistleblowers to go to. It makes sense that this guy would go to him. And so they concoct this email that goes out to him. They concoct the scenario whereby it looks like either they got this guy and he's on the payroll, like this Green Beret guy is like in the op, or they captured him and are using him as a patsy, as the fall guy for the op. And it looks like they're feeding the information out into sort of vetted social media decentralized channels so that we are the ones producing the PSYOP ourselves. And it's just the source information that is actually manipulated. That is what it looks like right now. And keep your eyes peeled, stay frosty, don't believe a single fucking thing you see. And if any of it points to war with Iran or China or Russia, even if it seems credible, it's fucking not. Doesn't matter. We're not going to war. Fuck that shit.
Yes. Thank you, Ian, for that quick breakdown of the current PSYOP happening. So I bring this up too because, and I covered this a while back, but Mike Benz, I should have dug the post up, but preparation is what preparation is right now, due to time constraints. However, I will just kind of summarize that for you. Mike Benz said a long time, like 6 months ago, that if Trump is to be elected, you will see this kind of chaos stuff happen. There will be a switch flipped, and you're going to see like all kinds of these, I don't believe that Black Lives Matter was a complete op, but I do believe that it was co-opted when you saw like pallets of bricks and these people in black masks and black suits come into the equation, who David Frum himself, avowed neocon David Frum, said in my intro clip, these are more than likely undercover officers. So that's where we're at with everything. He didn't even go into the New Orleans thing, where the guy ran a truck through Bourbon Street, which I've been on Bourbon Street. And the last time I was on Bourbon Street, a fight broke out because you couldn't even move. There were so many people packed into there. So a fucking vehicle like rolling through Bourbon Street is just, man, my heart goes out to people that were caught in that trap. Holy crap. That's a scary thought. My friend was pickpocketed. Like literally on Bourbon Street. I was there right before the pandemic for Mardi Gras, and just shoulder to shoulder, you couldn't move. People were, so packed in that people were tripping. One guy behind me tripped and then punched this other guy, and a fucking fight broke out. It was insane. So I can only imagine what it's like. But anyway, that is pretty much, I think, the most relevant news right now, outside of, Joe Biden just on the way out the door, shipping billions of dollars to Ukraine and Israel, when the public clearly voted. There was literally a popular mandate to end all this bullshit. But, the same thing happened when Trump won. People didn't pay attention to this. And this is one of the reasons I encourage you to pay close attention to what the Biden administration is doing in these lame duck months. When Trump beat Hillary Clinton back in 2016, the Obama administration went out of the way to kind of like lay booby traps for the incoming administration in order that they could kind of keep the status quo in place. And this is kind of just, it's the pattern with our government where, I talk about Bernie Sanders a lot because that was really my political activation, fully, that, we voted for this stuff on multiple occasions only to be told to go sit down. The adults are in charge. adults being people with ungodly sums of money who can just throw it at members of Congress and politicians and buy the agenda they want, despite the American public resisting that at every step of the way. And that's what you have here with this stuff. It's as the Trump administration's coming in, they're trying to generate, among the conservative base now, a fervor for war. But I don't think it's going to work. We're going to go back through the last 6 months of propaganda, really. I pulled a lot of great clips here from my previous shows, and I'm going to try to do a little bit better job executing this one than I did the last one. But I think the last one was all right too. I think it's good to revisit the world we live in and the propaganda that is being thrown at us, because it comes at you so fast, you almost forget, So I want to start here with this was we're going to start at episode 61 from June 16th of 2024 with a conversation between Candace Owens and Brianna Joy Gray. And I think the thing I love about this conversation, and I said this at the time, is that you're starting to see the boundaries of partisan politics breaking, and you're starting to see alliances forming that used to be impossible to form, these kind of crossovers between right and left voices. And so let's start with this. Hopefully my execution here is a little bit better, like I said, but here is the beginning of this conversation with Candace Owens and Brianna Joy Gray, and they have found common ground on the issue of censorship, on the issue of saying things that the status quo corporate media sources don't want said and trying to shut them out of the dialogue. Both of them were fired for criticizing a certain vassal state that the United States runs in the Middle East through money and influences. It's almost like a weird Ponzi scheme where we send them a bunch of money and then they use it to buy our politicians. Anyway, let's get into it. Here you go. This is Candace Owens and Brianna Joy Gray, the alliance that no one thought could happen. Pick this up.
Don't want to debate. They don't want to debate. I've reached out. I've tried to have people on for a debate. They don't want to debate. And the only people that don't want to debate their ideas while they're sitting and they're talking down to you and they're telling you that they're right and you're wrong and you're an anti-Semite are the people that are lying. That's my view. You're a liar, okay?
Yes! Already, right out the gate, fire. You have to love this.
Because I'm Candace, I don't have all of the degrees that the rest of these people have who think that they're so smart and they're so brilliant. Wouldn't you just think that you would slam me in a debate? I'm so dumb and you're so smart and you're so wise and you just need to teach us things. If the Israel argument is valid, sit down and debate it with somebody who is against the Israel argument. That's it. And let people watch it and let people observe it and let people move their opinion one way or the other. But I do want to ask you, Brianna, because we don't have much time here, a lot of stuff is also happening in Congress.
And that right there, that is such a great point. If your debate holds up, if you're not afraid of that your ideas will crumble, why would you dodge that? Why wouldn't you be proud to go stand next to a person who disagrees with you and defend your viewpoints? So she's making a great point there. That's honestly something I've never really connected the dots on. These people are lying. They don't want to open debate because they're liars.
No, if you caught Thomas Massie, he's my favorite congressman ever. I am a Thomas Massie stan. He sat down with Tucker Carlson and he said,
I'm also kind of a Thomas Massie stan. And the thing I love so much about this is these are two figures from political extremes. You would say political extreme. Brianna would be called far left because she worked for Bernie Sanders. And Candace will be called far right because she worked for Ben Shapiro, which, both of those, there's truth in both of those claims. But it's great to see these two people with, different viewpoints coming together on an issue where they've both, had experiences. We'll just leave it at that, experiences.
Essentially, every Republican in Congress, except for him, has an AIPAC handler. An AIPAC handler. We have seen the strength of AIPAC. We have seen the strength of the ADL. We talked about in monologue, which you didn't get to see, how Trump couldn't get this thing done. He wanted to ban TikTok.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
And it's gone. TikTok has got to go, or at least it passes in the House. And immediately you start to realize who's actually controlling Congress.
You know who John Greenblatt is, right? He's the guy from the ADL. And we have unlikely alliance there because of the censorship between Candace Owens and Breonna Joy Gray. And Candace Owens is one of those people who's really won me over in the last year or so, just by being unabashedly honest with her viewpoints and unafraid to kind of say the things that need to be said. And you see this in it's kind of splintering in the conservative world, right? And there's definitely a lot of stuff that I agree with Candace Owens on, but there's also a lot of stuff I disagree with Candace Owens on. And so, despite me professing my love for Candace Owens, I want to show you an issue where I disagree with Candace Owens, and that is on the issue of pornography. Now, she's a free speech absolutist, of course, but the issue of pornography is one where Candace Owens doesn't believe that pornography is free speech. Now, it's tough to come out and defend pornography, right? Like, hey, I'm here to defend pornography, said no one ever, right? It's not exactly the easiest thing to defend. But in this clip, and this is from episode 62 that aired June 23rd, 2024. I kind of go into the weeds on the history of porn a little bit. So I'm going to play this one a little bit longer than I might play some of the other ones, and enjoy this trip down memory lane right here. This is a good one, I think. Disneyland conservatives. Being gay is somehow wrong in the Bible, which it's not. It doesn't say anything about it in the New Testament. And so it irks me when people like Candace Owens, who are otherwise very intelligent and to the point on a lot of issues, basically completely fumble the ball on this. So Candace Owens had this discussion, and this segment's going to be called The Disneyland Conservatives, because I want to just show you how out of touch with reality Candace is on this issue. So watch this clip. This is her talking about porn addiction on on her podcast and answering some reader questions. And check this out.
Obviously an ill, it's obviously very bad, and yet there are people that are completely brainwashed and think that it's a matter of free speech. Like, obviously that's not free speech. People just having sex on a camera is not a matter of free speech.
Okay, that right there, out the gate, people are brainwashed to think that that's free speech. Now, Candace, what we know about free speech is that you have to protect speech that you don't like. Also, the great Bill Hicks once asked the question, what is pornography? What is pornography? Let's see what Google defines as pornography. Now, the definition, I think, has probably evolved a bit since Bill Hicks was, on the scene, I guess. But let's see here's what Google says, and let's talk about it. They got these AI results now. Pointed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. So keep that last part in mind. Intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. Now, what Bill Hicks pointed out back in his day, here, let me blow that up for you. I'm sorry, that's a little small. What Bill Hicks pointed out in his day was that, his joke was, doesn't that sound like every commercial on TV? And the Bud Light commercials have the chicks in bikinis cracking beer, and and then he goes into this whole joke about how if they could do it, they just have a naked woman with her fingers between her legs saying enjoy Coke, because. So what do you actually define as pornography? That's where it becomes a slippery slope, because once you have that control mechanism in place, and this is the control mechanism that Candace is advocating for, I'm going to go into why she's wrong about this, because she's dead wrong about this. Once you have that control mechanism in place, the definition of what's pornography can shift. Suddenly, if you show, pictures of a dead baby that's naked on a war zone, that's pornography, and they can censor that, and they can call that pornography. They can call anything. They're like, well, it's naked, so it stimulates erotic feelings, So it's these. When you start advocating for this stuff, you look ridiculous for like censoring porn. And also, Candace, you have the right as a parent, as a head of household, as the mother of a family, to keep pornography out of your household. This is another area where the conservatives just become the same hypocrites that the left is, because typically they're advocating for personal responsibility. And as a parent, it's your personal responsibility to keep pornography, keep your kids away from pornography, talk to your kids. Now, it could be argued that in today's world, it's nearly impossible to completely shield your children from pornography because it's everywhere. But that doesn't give you the excuse. They could have made the same argument back in the day with television. Now, should pornography and certain things be censored from certain environments? Absolutely. I mean, is that they disagree with. So listen to what she says to this. This is great.
Yeah, I think it's the exact opposite. I mean, people act like we lived in a society that there was always pornography. There wasn't. And that's why I said we need to do an episode, which I think I will try to do next week, where I take you through the history of pornography in this nation.
The only reason pornography didn't exist, the whole time is because of media, because it's really what mass media and the ability to display images to people on a massive scale is really where it came into the West. But anyway, let me let her finish here.
It actually is the opposite. The slippery slope theory has been proven true, that because of pornography, we are now suffering from a variety of different ills. It is impacting families, it's impacting relationships, it's impacting men. Men have addictions, it's impacting human sex trafficking. So the slippery slope, you're right, it is a theory that has proven true, but our society was functioning just fine with an understanding that this is not an example of free speech. We are the people that are offering their bodies on the internet and readily accessible to young children who stumble upon it. That is not an example of free speech.
Unfortunately for Candace, she is dead wrong about this. Just listen to the mental gymnastics she's doing here. I don't like it, so it's obscene. Mediums of pornography have changed with the advent of new technologies, but the substance of the genre has remained similar over centuries. The use of erotic material, however, has not always been the same throughout time. So this is why I call these people the Disneyland conservatives, because problems like prostitution and pornography have been a part of humankind long before the United States even existed as a country. Prostitution is the world's oldest profession. Ronald Reagan famously said, politics is the world's second oldest profession, but it bears a close resemblance to the first. He was referring to prostitution. So the idea that you can just regulate prostitution and pornography away is on its face a fairy tale and idiocy. But again, if you're true to pornography in 1524 and Candace Owens is blaming pornography on the downfall of America, it's not that our ethics are lost or that everything is about money. It's that people see sex stuff sometimes. All right, we're gonna stop there. But I went way into the weeds on this one. just to kind of explain how stupid the idea that pornography is not free speech is. It is free speech, like it or not. It isn't. Maybe you think it's indecent. Maybe your religious values, you know, say that that is terrible. That's fine. You are free to have those values and enforce those values in your own household. But in the United States of America, you are not free to enforce your religious values on people outside your household. We have a First Amendment for that, one which you defended, you know, when the Twitter files came out and it was conservatives being censored. But now that the shoe's on the other foot and you have the reins of power, it's going to be like, oh, these terrible leftists are ruining society by doing something that's been around since the dawn of time and humanity. You know, people were painting naked chicks on the sides of caves. Anyway, let's keep moving. I have a couple more here from June for you. This next segment was about the January 6th incident. And this is basically about a verdict that the courts reached back in, this is from June 30th of 2024. And hopefully I can nail this in point here for you, so we're not wasting the time. I'm trying to keep these as concise as possible here, but it's difficult. All right, here we go. So this is the January 6th verdict from June. Let's see, June. This is from my show, June 30th. I think it probably happened the week before, June 30th of 2024. Clip, because a recent thing happened that a lot of people did not catch, or wasn't widely reported anyway. And just take a look at this headline here. U.S. Supreme Court raises bar for obstruction charge against Trump and January 6 rioters. And this is from June 29th, so yesterday. The U.S. Supreme Court raised the legal bar on Friday for prosecutors pursuing obstruction charges. So what does that mean? Well, we're about to find out. And there's just a couple little interesting takeaways from this that you should know about. So let's just read this real quick. Washington, June 28th, Reuters. The U.S. Supreme Court raised the legal bar Friday for prosecutors pursuing obstruction charges in the federal election case against Donald Trump. Excuse me. And defendants involved in the January, that a defendant impaired the availability of integrity of documents or other records related to an official proceeding or attempted to do so. So that is actually a good decision that the Supreme Court made. What they're saying is you can't just blame these people or accuse them of trying to stop the election or mess with the election results when all they did was enter the building. There's no proof that they like tried to get into where the votes were being counted or anything like that. So this is clearly a pretty hyped up charge, as you know, it's kind of already showed you. But so that was the legal precedent that was set by the courts back in June for the January 6th rioters. So at this point, what are they even being held for? You know, a lot of them have been in jail for 3-4 years, you know. 3 years. I don't think it's been more than 3 years since January 6th happened. But I want to jump up to another point in this broadcast where Tucker Carlson showed banned footage from January 6th, which is the banned footage, of course, conflicts with the narrative that was constructed by the Democrats in Congress. And you're going to see, of course, their reaction to Tucker playing this. And a lot of people think he was fired for different reasons, but I think this was one of the main reasons he was kicked out of Congress, because you'll see the rhetoric that homeboy jumps in here. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to jump in right here. And check this out. This is Another trip down memory lane for you from June of 2024.
These are the pictures you've seen of January 6th. They're familiar because they've been playing on a loop on every media outlet in America for the last 2 years. There's a reason for that. But it turns out there's quite a bit of video you haven't seen. And that video tells a very different story about what happened on January 6th. More than 40,000 hours of surveillance footage from in and around the Capitol have been withheld from the public. And once you see the video, you'll understand why. Taken as a whole, the video record does not support the claim that January 6th was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim.
Now, I've said this before. There's clearly people that did illegal things, like the guy I played at the beginning of this segment, and those people should suffer consequences. If you vandalized, if you broke windows, if you the people that broke into Pelosi's office or whatever, any of those people should definitely, they're all on camera, so they should be able to be prosecuted for the stuff they did. But let's keep going.
And that's exactly why the Democratic Party and its allies in the media prevented you from seeing it. By controlling the images you were allowed to view from January 6th, they controlled how the public understood that day. They could lie about what happened, and you would never know the difference. Those lies had a purpose. They created a pretext for a federal crackdown on opponents of the Uniparty in Washington.
Our office wanted to ensure that there was shock and awe, that we could charge as many people as possible.
The first thing you notice from viewing the full video record of January 6th,
just watching this again is just, it's what I used to love about The Daily Show is he would kind of go back and touch on this stuff and take you down memory lane a little bit. I mean, they had to be a lot quicker about it. Here, we can really go into this stuff instead of just showing sound bites, but
is just how many people entered the Capitol building that day. Hundreds and hundreds of people, possibly thousands, over the course of about 2 hours. The crowd was enormous. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again. But the overwhelming majority weren't. They were peaceful. They were orderly and meek. These were not insurrectionists. They were sightseers. Footage from inside the Capitol overturns the story you've heard about January 6th. Protesters queue up in neat little lines. They give each other tours outside the speaker's office. They take cheerful selfies and they smile.
So you get the idea. In the interest of saving time, I'm going to try to keep these replays as short as possible. But there it is. That is, without a doubt, one of the biggest kind of showcasings of what actually happened that day, and I think one of the main reasons that Tucker was thrown off the air. We got Indy Left News in the comments. Indy, love you guys. Appreciate you jumping on. But let's go to the next clip I have from this June episode. This is again from June 30th of 2024, where Chuck Schumer responds to Tucker Carlson's playing of this video. This is very interesting stuff right here. So here is, and again, this is one of the reasons I believe Tucker was jettisoned from Fox News after playing this, is listen to what Chucky Baby here says on national television. This is good stuff. Just mind-blowing.
Should be presented to the public. In free countries, governments do not lie about protests as a pretext to gain more power for themselves. They don't selectively edit videos for propaganda services and then lie about them in fake hearings and show trials. But that's exactly what happened. And every member of Congress should ask why that happened. But Democrats in the Senate, the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, is not asking why. Instead, Chuck Schumer went on the Senate floor today to explode and to say that showing that video, evidence of wrongdoing by the federal government, including the security forces, the police department that Nancy Pelosi personally controlled, letting the public see any of that is a threat to democracy. Watch.
Last night, millions of Americans tuned in to one of the most shameful hours we have ever seen on cable television. Fox News host Tucker Carlson ran a lengthy segment last night arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection.
Surely
I
you
don't
can't
think
be
I've
serious.
ever seen a
I am
primetime
serious.
cable
Now,
news
don't call me
anchor
shook.
manipulate his viewers the way Mr. Carlson did last night. I don't think I've ever seen an anchor treat the American people and American democracy with such disdain.
There's
What's your
nothing
name, scumbag?
that shameful that has ever appeared.
And every accusation with these guys is a confession. That is just wild to watch again in retrospect. So the last thing I'm going to show you from this broadcast was the disaster that Biden was in the debate. And reviewing this content for this episode, you kind of see the escalations in the media against Trump, especially after this debate. And we're going to cover them to the point where someone fires bullets at him. And anyway, this is just and the way that Chuck Schumer just went on TV post that Tucker Carlson thing and just lied through his teeth without even blinking just gives you an idea. You know, going back to what I played at the beginning of this with the whole thing that's going on in the media with the Cybertruck blowing up in front of Trump Tower and all that. It's just uncannily ridiculous that these people think that we take any of them serious at a root level anymore. You know, it's very sad. Yes. Hopefully that guy's gone soon, but you know, it's not like we're in much of a better position with the current administration. Although I will say, I think that the left and people like myself are being a little preemptively, what's the word? Smug about what's going to happen in the Trump era. And the reason I say that is because it's the same. You got to remember, it's the same media that tried to tell you that, you know, what Tucker just said, that tried to tell you that Joe Biden was coherent, that is now telling you all this stuff about, you know, what the Trump administration is going to look like and stuff like that. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to kind of like watch the guy once he gets into office and the people that he hired once he gets into office, what they do. Because the commentariat right now is just like, oh, haha, MAGA, you guys are stupid. And it's like, yeah, we're not even there yet. You know, where we're at right now is the desperate, you know, neocon cunts in the Biden administration just like rushing to like throw money at all their neocon projects before they're out the door. Who knows what other kind of landmines they're putting in place. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the next clip here, which is Joe Biden's debate disaster back in June of 2024. Enjoy. Clips from the debate. I know that they've been pretty hardcore about, you know, basically taking down people who are using their content without express written permission or whatever. So check this out.
Senior golf swing. You don't have to try and convince me. There's all kinds of moments like that. There are those moments where Joe Biden just in mid-sentence, just his brain went off and he just started grasping around for words and just kind of floating away mid-sentence. It was extremely uncomfortable to watch. But at the same time, you knew that the people in media who had been spending months and years vehemently denying what everyone knew was true, namely that there was cognitive impairment of a very significant kind plaguing Joe Biden. And they weren't just denying that, they were attacking and maligning anyone who said it as being part of the right-wing disinformation machine. You knew that they were watching and were watching in horror and we're going to have to deal with it in some way. But if I had to pick the one thing that actually made me laugh the most, it was when halfway through the debate, when every Democrat, every liberal, office holder, politician, pundit, activist, journalist, were all admitting that this was a debacle of unprecedented proportions. All of a sudden, halfway into the debate, multiple media outlets started running to social media and announcing a breaking news story when they were using sirens and they said, Joe Biden has a cold tonight, according to sources familiar with the matter. So out of nowhere, just halfway through the debate, they all started to say, oh, Joe Biden has a cold. That's why he's doing so poorly. And obviously, if Joe Biden had a cold, that's something you would announce beforehand. It's not something that would just, obviously the Biden people started calling every media outlet that they control and saying, oh, we want to tell you the scoop, Joe Biden has a cold, and they all ran out of nowhere in the middle of the debate to say, breaking, Joe Biden has a cold.
So I want to take a quick sidebar here and go to the comments. We got Conspiriality in the chat. What's up, brother? You made a great... Okay, so that's kind of the... just Glenn Greenwald reminding you during the pandemic, or about, excuse me, the pandemic. The debate, which was like a pandemic of elderliness. So Glenn pointing out how the media in the United States, the corporate media, just marches in lockstep. Everyone's like, oh, Biden has a cold. He's not really demented. We got to still try to cling to this. So now we're going to move on to July. And I did what I thought was a very great piece back in July of 2024 about how the Biden administration are actually literally neocons. They are literally actually neocons. And I have proofs in this story that I'm going to share with you in case you missed it. So let's go back to July. What's the, let me give you the exact date. This is July 7th of 2024. I'm going to go right here too. Let's see what it's 30. Right around here. Here we go. I want to also show you this. When we talk about the Biden administration being neoconservatives, there is so much of this that people like, this guy Phil, completely gloss over, and honestly I think has been really obscured from view for the most part from a lot of people. And if you look at the Biden administration, people like Victoria Nuland, who resigned recently, is no longer in the Biden Defense Department, but Jake Sullivan, all these people, they all the neoconservatives, the war hawks, moved to their weight behind Biden, and that can mean only one thing. I wonder what that is. Let's keep going. Earlier this year, former Vice President Joe Biden effectively won the Democratic primary contest. As the Canary has previously argued, his victory is nothing to celebrate given that his progressive credentials are paper thin. Throughout his political career, Biden has been a prolific supporter of war and cuts to Social Security. He's also a friend of some of the most reactionary elements in the U.S. Congress. Now, his campaign has started receiving funding from former officials of a previous Republican Party administration, and this shows decisively what has long been suspected by progressive political analysts, and commentators, that the U.S. essentially has two right-wing major parties. Ta-da! And this is where people like Phil here just sound stupid when they rant about the left. Yo, Phil, this is not the left. Biden and the Democrats of today are not the left. And if you think that, you're either unintentionally or intentionally stupid. But let's keep going. So 43 alumni for Biden is formed. So this is an article about how a bunch of Bush administration officials, neocons, backed Biden. On 1st of July, a new organization backing Biden and calling itself 43 Alumni for Biden appeared online. The number 43 refers to the U.S.'s 43rd president, George W. Bush, a Republican. Bush's presidency to this day is overwhelmingly associated with neoconservatism and is connected to the police killing of George Floyd. So remember, this came out in July of 2020 as the campaign against Trump was ramping up with the Democrats, and they had just stomped Bernie and coalesced around Biden along with the neocons to get Trump out of office. But let's keep going. Wait. I skipped the second. Wait, did I skip the second paragraph on that? Constant lying. We're going to get to his racism in a minute, which I think is largely I almost said perverts. He is already perverted. Prefers Biden because Biden will prove to be a more competent, consistent, and above all, reliable administrator of the U.S.'s empire. After all, he served as vice president during the Barack Obama presidency, and as Canary has already argued on multiple occasions, Obama's presidency was one of the most reactionary in U.S. history, one that largely continued and even escalated many of the policies of George W. Bush, including or perhaps even especially in the realm of foreign policy. So there you have it. The Biden administration is a neocon administration, and people who were paying attention knew that from day one. Biden has a long history in Congress of just being the scummiest scumbag of all time. And somehow, because he was Obama's VP, he's been able to like repaint himself as some kind of a progressive icon, and only the absolute dumbest shit libs actually buy that. So just to keep this brief, I want to show you one more clip here. And this is just a shot that Alex Jones posted at the end of the Trump-Biden debate. And it's revealing because it shows you, how, again, not that you need any more proof, but how fucking captured and the press is and how much of state bootlickers they are. Watch this. Moderators. Watch this. So you see Trump just kind of trots off stage. And I muted the music in this because they had copyrighted music in it. But just watch what Biden does to Max and Aaron's point here. She kind of walks him down. And they go over and, oh, thank you guys. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Anyway, so there you go. It's just absolute insanity over the last year. Complete, just, it's good to revisit this stuff. It's really good for me just to see, with the way that the election kind of played out. And the public really giving me faith in them again for not buying any of this bullshit. It's really good to just revisit it and just see once again how ridiculous all of it was. So we're going to move now to July 14th, episode 65. And this was, I believe, the day after Trump's assassination attempt occurred. Forgive me for not remembering the exact date it happened, but I believe this was the next day. Yeah, because it was a Saturday, and I do my broadcasts on Sundays, so this was the next day after Trump was, someone shot at Trump. And so let's revisit some of this, and remember once again, Summer of Love. And let's just watch it real quick.
You see something that said, take a look at what happened.
The timing, I just want to pause for a second because I've been thinking this a lot. The timing of those shots is really good because I don't know if right as he says, this is really sad. If you want to hear something really sad, the shot goes off. It was like almost like the guy heard what he was saying. That was a very well-timed attempt. Obviously, let's start real quick.
You see something that said, take a look at what happened.
So watch this guy. This guy directly behind the podium in the middle. It's the video at first. I think a lot of people thought this was staged because when you watch this video, watch this guy in the black jacket and the white t-shirt that's directly behind the podium. He looks confused. And so I think when a lot of people saw this initially, they were like, this is weird. People aren't reacting. But you can hear the woman screaming in the background. And this guy, remarkably, people didn't stampede. This guy kind of, they look kind of confused, like, hey, what's going on? Anyway, watch this again real quick. Just watch this guy in the back, right here in the middle. Because just the people's watching the crowd reactions, it's really interesting. Some people duck, but like this guy with the hat and the jetpack, he just kind of stands there like confused. He's like, what's going on?
Move it there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Move. Go. Hawkeye's here.
You hear them say Hawkeye's here, and then this sniper walks into the room. So they've
fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back. Then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times, and every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination, obviously, and no one will say that, but I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. You know what I mean?
So Tucker, very poignant prediction there. That was from way before the shots happened. And in this episode too, I went into the weeds on it, go back and watch it. There's tons of people covered it, but there was all kinds of people saying how, the shooter was visible, and, they totally like almost intentionally ignored the guy. So, another high point in this episode was I showed how RBN, Revolutionary Blackout Network, went at Chuck D for working with the State Department, which is just, they're selling out to make money, but then there's just like selling out despite like everything that made you what you are. Public Enemy is, the reason I loved Public Enemy, and I think I say this in this clip, is because they scared white people. And now they're just working with the State Department. So I'm going to jump around in this a little bit because it's kind of long, but this is when Revolutionary Blackout Network actually got Chuck D, to his credit, to come on their show and called him out about this kind of hypocrisy here. See how much of this we can get.
COINTELPRO did back in the day. We know about what a lot of the United States did in regards to what they've done in many different countries around the world. My question is, if knowing what the United States has done, knowing what the United States is currently doing right now, why are we allowing ourselves to be used by the United States government to kind of be more of a whitewashing as to their image of what they're doing around the world? Because to be honest,
this is the problem too that we all had with Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Squad and all of them. We elected you motherfuckers to go in and be a disruption, and here you are siding with the people we elected you to fight. First of all, respect to Chuck D for engaging here, and respect for Nick and these guys, because I was part of the Bernie Sanders
travel under promoters, the circuit, and they stay away. But at the end of the day, you got to report to some.
Also, Nation of Islam killed X. They were infiltrated by the FBI.
Body, man. I'm serious. You ain't going around the world. You in Detroit. Go to Windsor. Wrong. Who you reporting to?
I don't think he has to sign up for the State Department's program.
No. He's not working, but if he's working.
Slink is a legend. Seriously, Slink, mad props to you, bro.
He's going to sign up with somebody. Hey, here's another thing. Somebody says, "Oh, we're not." But listen, bro, listen.
I don't have to answer to nobody because I'm my own boss, my own CEO, and
you gotta answer somebody going to Windsor to do your business. You gotta answer. Look. Here's another thing, bro. Listen. Let's hold Malcolm for a second, bro.
So, reading the comments during this too, people are like, he keeps filibustering, and that's exactly what happens. So, let me show you this next clip.
Republican Convention, 1996. So then they say, "Oh, there's Strom Thurmond over there." Ask him some questions. I had like 3 hardcore fucking questions.
Asking like about family situations of different people on the call in regard to like trying to justify meeting with these people. The closest analogy would maybe be if somebody I knew closely became a policeman or something, and then I would stop fucking with them because I see that as a force that hurts my people. So like, I don't see how you can justify, like, I mean, maybe if you never really like had, maybe if you changed, I guess, like, was the fight the power type shit, was that just, you know, like you said on the tweet, it was one day in 1989, I only seen the video 50 times in my life. You said something like that. So was that just a fleeting day back in the 80s and you never really felt that way? Or was that just like, I don't understand. I don't see the consistency between fighting the power and then rocking with Blinken. That's all. It just don't make.
So one of the things that hit me when I saw this at first is this is the kind of stuff that needs to happen more often because this is how we've gotten to where we are. No one had, the only people that had this type of energy with the squad were people like Jimmy Dore, who were instantly slandered as a racist, white supremacist, Trumper for, you know, calling them out. And these guys are, you know, putting Chuck's feet to the fire. And that's what needs to happen. I mean, he's a guy who a lot of people have looked up to for being a voice of the oppressed. And now he's working with the State Department.
Makes sense to me.
All right. So props to RBN for going hard with Chuck D. Go watch that whole interview because it's long and I pulled a couple of clips. I don't want to jump around in it all day, but mad props to them. So there's another piece in this where there was a tweet that showed Chipotle prices in 2008. Let me jump up to that and share that with you because that is also just an interesting little tidbit to discuss. Let me go back just a little bit here. All right, check this out. Real quickie here. Back then. So this is Chipotle 2008. This is what they took from you. I mean, this was 2008, so it's going on 20 years ago. You know, we'll be in 2025, you know, basically 17 years ago. But look at these prices. A chicken burrito, $5.60. A steak burrito, $5.75. Carnitas, $5.60. Like literally $5. All these burritos are $10 plus now. So that's just a good example of how out of hand the inflation has gotten in this country. So I'm going to show you one more clip from this episode, and it's a clip of just a piece that I put together of Max Blumenthal and his speech at the UN. And I won't show the whole thing, but this is, I think, one of my better creations of the year. I kind of took Gray Zone's intro music and put a sample over it and, you know, cut Max's voice like a rapper on the beat. So check this out. And sews all this up together in a nice little, neat little package. So I hope you enjoyed if you haven't seen it yet. And I got love for y'all. Take care of yourselves out there. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Describing to you, which sees Washington prioritize unrestrained funding for a proxy war with a nuclear power in a foreign land while our domestic infrastructure falls apart before our eyes, exposes a disturbing dynamic at the heart of the Ukraine conflict. An international Ponzi scheme that enables Western elites to seize hard-earned wealth from the hands of average U.S. citizens and funnel it into the coffers of a foreign government Indeed, military cemeteries in Ukraine are expanding almost as rapidly as the Northern Virginia McMansions and beachfront estates of executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and assorted Beltway contractors benefiting from the second highest level of military spending since World War II. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. The Biden administration not only knows that it cannot track the weapons it's shipping to.
So that was my Max Blumenthal gangster piece from him speaking at the UN. We're going to move to the next episode now, which was the following week, and also in July, but this aired on July 21st of 2024. And this was the day that Joe Biden dropped out of the race. This was after the debate, after they tried to shoot at Trump. They being, God knows who. But this is the point when Biden actually dropped out of the race. I happened to be on because it was a Sunday morning. So check this out. Here we go. How y'all doing today?
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Oh, I am so glad you are here.
Yo, we here now.
I never used these sound drops. Well, let's jump right into it today because my good man Extra Bulla gave me a scoop this morning. Biden is out of the race. There were a lot of people that rightly predicted this a long time ago, and cheers to them. I did not think that the Democrats would go through with this, but apparently they are going to do it. So let's see what Mr. Biden here has to say. It's not going to let me. It's not going to let me zoom in on it. Let's try this. America's never been. There we go. Now we got the full screen. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. Oh, man, I have a piece prepared on that in a minute. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic blah, 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 passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court. That I will give Biden credit for, and Ketanji Brown Jackson has been good. She actually ruled correctly on that insurrection case recently, so props to Biden for that. I'll give him that one. And passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. Okay, maybe. Position to lead than we are today. I strongly disagree with that statement. I know. All right, so there you have it. That was Biden's dropout letter. And this is, again, from July 21st of 2024. There was one other thing in this episode I wanted to touch on real quick before we keep moving. And that was a bit about a guy named Max Boot. And Max Boot is a relentless neocon columnist who wrote, very pro-war, very just a complete douchebag. The kind of guy who relentlessly accused Trump of being a foreign asset. But as it turns out, his wife was a spy for South Korea. So here's Glenn Greenwald going into the weeds on this one for you. And I won't spend a ton of time on this, but this was funny to watch as well. Is one of these people who caped heavily for the Iraq War was a guy named Max Boot. And just to show you real quick the nature of Max Boot, who I call Maximum Bootlicker. Whenever I see a tweet about Max Boot, I always respond, Max Boot, a lot of people don't know this, but Max Boot is actually short for Maximum Bootlicker. And you're going to see why. So here we go. Max Boot is sorry for backing the GOP in Iraq War. The Iraq War in the limits of American power. No need to repent for, as you go further down here, you find out more. One of the central arguments that I and other supporters of the Iraq invasion made was that regime change could trigger a broader democratic blah, blah, blah. So here's Max Boot kind of apologizing for supporting the Iraq War. And then let's fast forward to today. Here's Max Boot supporting another war. And so, it's obviously, and look, all these people, all these neocons have been reformed as anti-Trump Republicans, you'll notice. So Max Boot is one of those guys who, spent his career in recent days calling anyone who has questions about the, skirmish in Eastern Europe a Russian asset. And what's great about this right now, if you've seen the news, Max Boot was recently found, well, his wife was found to be a spy for the Korean government. And so I'm going to just show you a little bit of this clip of Glenn Greenwald talking about it.
For his internal weakness, just one of those kind of neocons, very, very standard. But what he also is somebody, like most neocons, who the minute you question their wars and say, wait a minute, why are we going to this war? Why should we go to war in this country? Will accuse you of being an agent of that foreign country. It's not that you disagree about whether the U.S. should fight the war. It's that you must be a sympathizer of Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi or Bashar al-Assad or Vladimir Putin. And the reason why Max Boot went from being a hardcore Republican in the Bush years to now being a overt Democrat and a hater of Donald Trump is because he spent so many years insisting and writing that he had no question that Donald Trump was a secret agent, a spy or agent of the Russian government, even being paid or blackmailed to do it. Obviously, there was no evidence for that. Robert Mueller, after 18 months, barely alluded to that theory, let alone affirmed of working for South Korea. Obviously, Matt Boot's wife is a former CIA analyst. Quote, Sumi Terry, a North Korea expert.
You just called him Matt Boot. No, Glenn. This is our good friend Maximum Bootlicker.
With the Council on Foreign Affairs, was charged with acting as an agent for Seoul after leaving the intelligence agency. Sumi Terry, a prominent voice on American foreign policy, had a refined palate, a love for top shelf sushi, and a
just want to take a quick break to say,
isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Taste for designer labels. She likes coats by Christian Dior, handbags by Bottega Veneta and Louis Vuitton, and Michelin-starred restaurants. And according to federal prosecutors in Manhattan, she accepted such luxury goods and other gifts in exchange for serving the South Korean government in Seoul. Ms. Terry, a former CIA analyst and a senior fellow for Korea Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, is accused in a 31-page indictment, remember, by the Biden Justice Department, released Tuesday, of a years-long effort to assist South Korean spies. The indictment says she even introduced the spies to congressional staff members, and an action that she described as, quote, bringing the wolf in. She was bringing the wolf into the most sensitive areas of the U.S. government, and she married Max Boot, who has a lot of access in Washington. Quote, in Ms. Terry's case, prosecutors said she began operating as a foreign agent in 2013, 5 years after leaving the CIA. She was first contacted by an intelligence officer posting as a diplomat for the Korean mission to the UN in New York City, the indictment said. In return for her work over the next decade, Ms. Terry received handbags, clothing, and at least $37,000 in covert payments to the think tank where she was employed.
I was going to say $37. Come on, Glenn. $37? That'll barely buy lunch in D.C.
At the time, according to the indictment, federal agents had suspicions regarding Ms. Terry's contact with Seoul as recently as November 2014, when the FBI called her in for a voluntary interview.
Sorry about that. I muted my mic so I could. So anyway, every accusation with these people is a confession. And anyone who's accusing anyone of being a foreign agent like Max Boot here should probably have their laundry looked at. It's just a very Freudian thing to do. Real quick to the comments here. Ellen Jimerson, hey, loved your commentary about late night TV shows. Really, thank you, Ellen. I definitely appreciate that. I spent a lot of time on it, and I forgot to tell you guys, it was censored immediately. So there's a bit about John Oliver where I pulled a clip of him attacking RFK Jr. and I uploaded it, and YouTube immediately like, this video cannot be seen because of this clip. So I then went back in and changed the audio out and because the clip has captions, and uploaded it again, and they still flagged it for a copyright violation. So it's very clear that YouTube didn't want me showing that clip of John Oliver making baseless accusations against RFK because it was about the, Anyway, thank you very much for that feedback. That's the type of video I'm probably gonna be doing a lot more of moving forward. These kind of like more informative, trips down memory lane. It takes a little bit more effort to produce those, but I really enjoy it. And going into the weeds on all those old talk shows and stuff was interesting, just to see how they're all kind of like corporate entities, really. Anyway, to keep going here, this is one of the real juicy scenes, and I'm going to let this play for a minute. But this is from before the election, Cenk Uygur speaking to Michael Tracy on Glenn Greenwald's show and defending, kind of like low-key defending the Democrats still before the election. So this is actually really good, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. So I'm going to play this while I grab another cup of coffee, and I'll be right back. But enjoy this. You are going to revel in this footage right here.
Just quote to you, this was a letter that Joe Biden delivered to congressional Democrats on July 8th. This is the same day that he had his infamous Defiance Morning Joe call-in. Here's what he wrote in that letter. And maybe I'm unusual because I actually read the letter. And I remember it. It was only a couple of weeks ago. I know everything we just throw down the memory hole at warp speed nowadays. But he says, the voters of the Democratic Party have voted. They have chosen me as the nominee of the party. Do we just now say that this process didn't matter, that the voters don't have a say? I decline to do that, he says.
I love that Joe Biden thinks it mattered in the first place. Like, remember what they did? They moved the first primary from Iowa to South Carolina just to rig the primary for Joe Biden, and then they pulled the cane out and just ripped him off the stage and propped up Kamala.
A deep obligation to the faith and the trust of the voters of the Democratic Party who have placed in me this year. It was their decision to make, not the press, not the pundits, not the big donors, not any selected group of individuals, no matter how well-intentioned. The voters and the voters alone decide the nominee of the Democratic Party. And this is the kicker, okay, Cenk? Biden says, how can we stand for democracy in our nation if we ignore it in our own party? I cannot.
Wow, Biden sounds like me.
Do that. I will not do that. So how are the Democrats with a straight face going to start screaming, as they have incessantly forever? And you apparently agree on the substance of this point. I might quibble a little bit. I think a lot of the rhetoric around democracy and Trump overturning it tends to be a bit histrionic and overblown, but that's more of a substantive conflict we may have. But in terms of the consistency of the Democrats' own messaging, Joe Biden himself is the one who said that it would be undermined if they allowed this insider putsch to go forward. So are we just going to now memory hole this letter? Is Joe Biden really now going to be so cast by the wayside that everybody's supposed to forget Ezra Klein, Matthew Iglesias,
Yes, absolutely.
Thomas Friedman, the Washington Post, Vox, name your Democratic aligned pundit or media outlet? Are they all going to forget that, 2.5 weeks ago, Joe Biden said that if you go through with this ouster of me, it means that our own party, the Democratic Party, is thwarting democracy? I mean, to me, it just seems, I feel crazy.
So let's be honest about this too. Let's be just completely bluntly honest about this. If you have the presidency, you're not going to have a primary. You're not like I understand why the Democrats did that politically. It makes sense strategically, and I give them credit. I'll give them credit for that. The Republicans did the same thing when Trump was president. They didn't have a primary. They've got the White House. Why would they do that? So you do have to give them credit for that. But the problem here is that all these people knew very well how senile Joe Biden was, and that he wasn't actually running anything. And I think if there's any silver lining to Joe Biden's presidency, it's the proof positive that the president himself or the person that they put in there is almost meaningless, and that these bureaucrats in the permanent Washington, permanent state, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to call it deep state now because everyone equates that with conspiracy bullshit. And the reality is there is a permanent Washington. People like Anthony Fauci are evidence of that. You know, the guy's worked in the halls of power for 50 years. But the point, again, is that the Biden presidency kind of proves positive. Like Glenn brought this up recently. Who's running the country right now? They told us for weeks that Biden was senile. Kamala's out doing rallies now. And so who's actually running things? I think
I demand to have a primary in Florida. I can't believe they canceled that election. And I demand that everybody be put back on the ballot in North Carolina and Tennessee during the primaries. And I demand that we do debates during the primaries so the candidates could be tested and that the voters get what they want. Oh, right, he didn't do any of that. No, he's monumentally full of crap. He loved that the primary was totally authoritarian, totally rigged to not only make sure that he was a candidate, but that he was protected and hidden in a basement.
So I will give Cenk that. That is a valid point he's making there. Like I said before, Joe Biden didn't have any problem with the primary until they decided to oust him. And it was a very unfair primary to begin with. But again, strategically, it makes sense that the Democrats would do that. I don't really him take, obviously being the benefactor or the person who benefited from that primary. So I will give Tracy credit again. He kind of called Cenk out for the hypocrisy a little bit in this. So listen to this next clip.
Proceedings matter because the next step in that plot, again, written by Eastman, who is Trump's lawyer, is.
So Cenk here is talking about why January 6th and the 2020 election were such a big deal.
Then you say, well, since we couldn't certify the election, we have no choice but to go back to the state legislatures and ask who are their electors that they want to send up. Now, at that point, that's when they had the fake electors that were ready to go.
But Cenk,
they
this
knew
was
they
a
had lost.
harebrained scheme that Eastman cooked up in concert with other Trump operatives to try to invoke some, I think, unfounded constitutional strategy whereby they could delay the certification of the votes.
It's a scheme very similar to pretending the person who beat you in the election was a secret Russian spy sent by Putin to destroy America. Very similar harebrained tactic, if I might add.
And have the veracity of the election outcomes in individual states retabulated. And the idea was they would prove that some fraud took place, and therefore the legitimate electors would be awarded to Trump. I don't think that was a defensible strategy. All I'm saying is to conflate that with an attempt to overthrow the government or abolish
Michael,
democracy.
let me finish.
Or
again, these people, the idea that they were about to overthrow the most powerful military in the world is patently ridiculous, but I'll let you
carry out a coup. I mean, this is insane democratic hyperbole, and all the more ridiculous given what Biden just said is the undemocratic tendencies within the Democratic Party itself. I mean, you even had Democrats in individual states try to strike Trump from ballots by invoking this insurrection clause of the Constitution, and the Supreme Court unanimously said that that was not legitimate. So I just think that, if you want to talk about democracy, I'm not saying you, but if Democrats or whomever wants to venerate the sanctity of democracy, well, you have points that are scored on each side in terms of democratic infringements, right? Including on the Democratic side and the Republican side. Doesn't mean that they're equal. And I agree that what Trump did after the 2020 election was discreditable, but it seems like there's this inveterate need for Democrats to just chronically exaggerate what that actually signified.
That was an intellectual bitch slap right there by Michael Tracy. Hats off to him for that. Hats off. But he also kind of at the end of it, softened it a little bit. I'm not saying you personally, but it's the point I've been making throughout this. How can you sit here and say Trump is a threat to democracy after what the Democrats have been visibly doing for the last 10 years? You have, and of course now Cenk has come around and is, hey guys, I guess I'm with you now. So this was how pathetic he was in the build-up to the election in defense of this garbage, and I mistakenly put a July tag on that. This particular episode is episode 67 from August 11th. And this next clip is not going to be too long, but this is one of my favorite clips of the year from the boys at Due Dissidence. I have to give Keaton some mad credit for this point that he makes to Thomas Frank, because I think that this is why one of the big reasons the Democrats lost is this mentality, this post-duopoly mentality. And Keaton just eloquently friggin' lays it out in this clip, and I'm just gonna play it for you, and we can talk about it. It's when it's when Due Dissidence interviewed Thomas Frank. So just enjoy this little trip down the memory lane right here.
I don't think so. Look, what I would say is when you speak to that level of hopelessness, that level of despair, because I started out the 2020 cycle somewhat radicalized, but I was not a Bernie or Buster at the start of that cycle. I was convinced that Trump was worth getting rid of. But then a couple of people talked to me. They said, when you talk about people who need medical debt cancellation in order to live, in order to keep a roof over their head, or people who need universal health care, or need their student debt forgiven, or need these things that Bernie's talking about, if they stand up and say, okay, we are willing to go all in for this and threaten the Democrats with annihilation if they don't capitulate, this narrative that the PNC,
that's what's been happening. That is de facto what has been happening since, for years. And that's the message of what's the matter with Kansas, and the message of Listen Liberal. And that message never got through. The message that they
I don't disagree with that either. I think Thomas Frank is honestly one of the people who was the first to sound the alarm on the populist exodus out of the Democratic Party. And it really kind of solidified when they did the stuff they did to Bernie for 2 election cycles in a row.
Certain point, look, my wife works at a hospital. We're not poor, right? You're obviously not a poor man. Russell is not a poor man either.
Look at all those books.
Look at all those books. At a certain point, I think solidarity with desperate people in desperate need means willing to go all in with them, even if it means sacrificing an uncomfortable situation for us. Now, I personally still don't feel I have much to lose if Trump wins, but if you do, that's fine. I think part of solidarity with these populist type movements means being able to say to the UPS worker who is loading boxes from midnight to 8 in the morning, working Walmart noon to 8 at night, 5 days a week, who's at the end of his rope. Part of solidarity with those workers is saying, we are with you in demanding what you need, or else we will let this country burn. And that is what solidarity sounds like to me. Solidarity does not sound like, well, yeah, we're going to try, but then we're going to blink at the last second and give Joe Biden 4 more years because Trump is scary.
Do you think? Yeah. I don't know.
Still as relevant today as it was a year ago. Props to Keaton. Let's see what else. So apparently that clip was from earlier, but I played it on this show in August just to illustrate the incredible point that Keaton made, which was that if you want the party that's closest to your beliefs to listen to you, you have to show them that you're capable of not voting for them. That's what Lawrence O'Donnell said, the clip that Jimmy Dore plays almost weekly. So we're going to move on now to August 25th of 2024, and I'm going to start with this clip of Andrew Tate, one of the obviously heroes of the left, talking about midwits and data. And this is, I'm not the hugest Andrew Tate stan or anything, but I thought this was very relevant piece of tape, and it's something worth revisiting in the kind of trip down memory lane we're taking today. So enjoy this. Here's your boy Andrew Tate interview he did, because I really enjoyed a lot of what he had to say, and especially this thing right here, which is kind of a based opinion about data and midwits. So listen to this,
Can
and
garner
we'll talk about
from the data, as he says. Take a listen.
I'm glad I'm super rich. Now that I'm super rich, I get to be one of those crazy rich guys who acts unusual. And they're like, oh, he's a bit eccentric, but he's rich, so he gets away with it. Like wearing a microphone on his chest. Everyone else puts a suit on, hides the microphone. I'm like, get a microphone, bro. Don't care. Built different. Don't care. One of my habits now is ignoring all data.
So already this is comedic. It's like outwardly comedic. He's like sitting shirtless in front of a car. Look at the surroundings too. Like it looks like a hood neighborhood. It's not even like a nice house or anything. He's just like, here's my car and here's me shirtless on a stool. So right there, you kind of got to go, okay, this guy's definitely being a troll.
Data. It's great. I love when people come to me and say, actually, we've got the data to prove what? You little what are you going to prove to me? I can prove to you that the ice caps are melting. There's ice in my water right now. I'm going to leave the water unattended until the ice melts. Will the water overflow out of the cup? No. Why are all the richest, most important people in the world who are pushing this scam buying beachfront homes? Oh, but the data says. The data's from the Matrix, and you are the Matrix, and the Matrix is full of lies. Anyone who actually analyzes data nowadays proves they're a dumbass. Have you seen that graph thing, that meme where you have the most stupid people and the most intelligent people do the same thing? Then you have the midwit in the middle. Data is for midwits.
Okay, this is the part that I think is the most salient and made me go, oh, wow, he's making some good points here.
Well, the data says. Yeah, the data says. Well, actually, I guess statistically, the pharmaceutical company who sells the jab made the data. Why are you even reading it? Why are you reading it? There were stupid people who sat there and said, the jab's made of 5G cellular data. And then there was extremely intelligent people like me who said, I don't trust these motherfuckers. And we both didn't get the jab. All the people in the middle were like, well, the data says, and the news said. They wouldn't just make us all take a jab for no reason. Jabby jab, jabby jab. If you even look at data nowadays, you're a dumbass. You should just know. Street smart people don't need data. We've just been around. I've just been around. I just know things because I've just been around on the street. Somebody's trying.
This is so good. This kind of I'll just let him talk. Listen.
To give you something for free so desperately, it's probably a trap. When you're street smart like me, you're on the corner. You, your boys, some bitches. Guy comes up to you, goes, you want a hamburger? Not really. Hamburgers are good for you. If you don't eat, you'll die. Yeah. You should really have this hamburger. I don't want it. If you don't have this hamburger, you're going to lose your job. And we're going to lock you in your house. I don't trust him or his hamburger. Why were you people like, well, do you have a study about this hamburger? Do you have some data on the hamburger? Oh, it says that protein's good for you. Give it to me. Dumbass. The guy who got the hamburger is trying to force it down your neck, pull the study out of his
So there you go. I thought that was an extremely relevant piece of tape, considering the trajectory of the year and the clip I showed you at the beginning of this stream. It's even more relevant. So last clip I got for you from this episode is Nick Cruz explaining what I've been hammering on all through 2024, that the Democrats are fucking neocons. And I'll just let Nick do the legwork here. Enjoy. Getting a little rusty.
At the DNC convention, gave one of the craziest speeches you will ever hear, where she essentially promises never-ending conflict and never-ending war. Kamala Harris's speech was so bloodthirsty that Lockheed Martin stock prices skyrocketed after she gave it. In a speech that could have been written by Dick Cheney, Kamala Harris engages in the classic neocon tactic of dividing the world into good guys and bad guys, where the United States are the good guys engaging in war and conflict against the quote-unquote bad guys. Kamala Harris names Russia,
Afghanistan and Iraq for the Democrats. Here we come.
Iran, China, and North Korea as the evil countries the United States must bring to heel.
That America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century and defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend against Putin's aggression. I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators.
I have to pause this for a second because her speech here is even more relevant now, considering, you know, the Ian Carroll thing I showed you at the beginning of this. Anyway.
Dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump.
Trump is so scary. Oh my God, he's so scary. He's such a devil.
Ma'am, it is you, the United States and the West, that are funding and facilitating a whole ass genocide. But they want to convince us that Russia, China, and Iran are the bad guys? All the countries that Kamala fearmongers over are the countries that want to hold Israel accountable for their genocide. Meanwhile, in the speech, Kamala Harris reiterated her undying support of Israel and how she will continue to support them during their genocides and acts of terrorism.
I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself.
Kamala Harris
There you go.
married her AIPAC babysitter, but you guys thought she was going to be different on the issue of genocide? What do you guys expect for someone whose policies are being written by BlackRock? Palantir, an AI company that helps Israel with targeting during their slaughter of the Palestinians and have been pushing for conflicts against Russia, China, and Iran, enthusiastically endorsed Kamala Harris. BlackRock, Palantir, Lockheed Martin. It's clear who will benefit from a Kamala Harris presidency. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for the imperialist war machine. This is another example of why the Democratic Party is the most effective evil.
So Nick lays it down right there for you. And that was pre-election, obviously. And I think one of the big reasons that the Democrats did not prevail in this cycle. So we're going to move into September now. And I'm not going to be too heavy on this, but this is a piece of propaganda from September about the so this is episode number 69, baby, from September 2nd of 2024. And this particular piece is about propaganda that they were attacking Trump with about Arlington Cemetery. The dialogue, instead of the difference between these two candidates on what they support, is key. Because if you listen to Trump talk, and I've played the clips of him. All right, hold on a second. My StreamYard's giving me problems now. So let me show you this clip of Tulsi Gabbard on CNN, and let's talk about it a little bit more. All right. I'm confusing my StreamYard, so let me just stop here for a second and reset it. Let me reboot StreamYard. So sometimes when I transition like this, it doesn't want to give me the full screen, and I don't like that. Here we go again. Let's try this again. See if it works this time. Trump talk, and I've played the clips of him on Tim Pool saying we don't want more wars. He's the one candidate who's actually saying, hey, you know, like I would end the Ukraine thing. And I think that is why this type of stuff is made into an issue by the people who want that to keep going. So let me show you this clip of Tulsi Gabbard on CNN, and let's talk about it. A little bit more detail on this.
With regard to controversy after the former president visited Arlington National Cemetery this week. His campaign took photos and video of him in Section 60, where veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are buried, used it in a campaign video. The Army also says that Trump staffers abruptly pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to enforce Arlington's rules prohibiting political activities. I know you were with Trump at least earlier in that day at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Did you witness the altercation at Section 60?
So I will say this. Tulsi is the most qualified probably of any politician to speak about this because she's actually a military, you know, she actually served in the military and I think still does to some degree. So she's seen people killed, you know, and if anyone should be outraged by the constant circus drone of Trump at Arlington, Trump at Arlington, Trump at Arlington, Trump at, it should be her.
I was there from the beginning with the laying of the wreaths with the family members, the Gold Star family members, and some of the survivors of that terrorist attack in that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I was with them at Section 60, and what I saw was a very grave and somber remembrance and honoring of those lives that were lost. And I saw President Trump spending time at the invitation of these Gold Star families with them. He was there for a few hours. I did not see or hear about any kind of altercation until something came out in the news later on. The families were there.
So that's another interesting kind of side point. I didn't hear anything about this altercation until the news. And, you know, because as we've seen, the news just manufactures shit like this as a, you know, manufactured shit like this as a kind of counterweight to Trump. And they're still doing it. I mean, he's not even in office yet, and there's still all kind of like, as again, throwback to the beginning of this. But we're going to jump up to episode 70 now, which is also in September. And I'm going to show you a clip of the big reason that I think the Trump campaign kind of won is the Democrats tried to paint neoconservatism and the Cheneys as like this like liberal counterweight to Donald Trump. And it just, I kind of highlight how ridiculous that is in this piece where I took the Charlie XCX Brat album and made it into an acronym for Brunch Republicans Against Trump. So enjoy this little sidebar here. This is from episode 70, which aired on September 8th of 2024. because, if you know me, brunch liberals are something that I regularly, that's a slur I like to use. Brunch libs, brunch liberals, people that are out to brunch while, regular people are trying to change things in the country. This was a term that evolved during the Bernie Sanders movement. The people that when Hillary lost, I think the genesis of the term was some woman said, if Hillary was president, I'd be at brunch right now, as they're protesting Trump in the streets. So both Dick and Liz Cheney came out in support of Kamala Harris recently. I don't know if you saw this or not, but we're going to share a tweet from one of my favorite accounts, Rat, Republicans Against Trump, right here. Take a look at this. And new statement from former Vice President Cheney. In our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He could never be trusted with power again. That's real rich coming from the guy, the hanging Chads guy. As citizens, we each have a duty to put country above partisanship and defend our Constitution. That's why I'll be casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. And here's more video of his daughter, just so we got it
for many
of Liz Cheney.
years.
Let's listen to this.
Dick Cheney, your father, a beloved figure among Democrats for many years. Do you, if you know who he will be supporting or who he'll be voting for, do you care to share with us who he might be voting for?
Dick Cheney will be voting for Kamala Harris.
Listen to that cheer. Listen to that applause.
Wow.
And that is so brat. So there you go. Republicans against Trump for Kamala Harris. The worst Republicans, of course, against Trump for Kamala Harris. So let's keep going here. This next clip from episode 70 is your boy Kyle Kulinski siding with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney in his endorsement of a presidential candidate here. And if you've watched Kyle's trajectory, it has been pretty hilarious. He's now like the anti-Joe Rogan guy for whatever reason. But check this out. Here is Kyle Kulinski disingenuously, basically proving he's a Democrat, a DNC shill for the. Let's start
Status
with
quo.
that. This is your good friend Kyle Kulinski gushing about Kamala Harris's recent interview with CNN. Hold on, before we do that, credit to Postoopolis here for the tweet. Kyle Kulinski fawns over Kamala's disaster of an interview. He says she doesn't sound inauthentic. The interview went from good to great. She's an upgrade from the past, and that she's kind of fucking killing it. So let's watch
She
this
has to
clip.
do, and this is definitely more like modern day Kamala Harris, who's more comfortable in her skin and confident, versus 2020 Kamala Harris running in the primary, where she was sort of flailing and all over the place, and she felt very inauthentic.
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug.
So let's just start with the claim that they brought inflation down to 3%. Has anything gotten cheaper for you? Because it hasn't for me. So that's an arbitrary claim right off the bat. But let's keep going.
The prices never happened. We did it.
Oh, this interview so far just went from good to great. Kamala and Biden's move was, which is $35 insulin across the board in Medicare. Part B, Part D. You also have the 10 drug prices per year, where it was negotiated for lower prices with the pharmaceutical industry. Now, you could argue, hey, that didn't go far enough. We needed to reduce the price of all the drugs. I 100% agree with that. But the fact of the matter is the Democratic plan is way more wide-ranging and far-reaching than Trump's plan, but he keeps trying to take credit. And she's setting the record straight here and going, we did way more than you did, and we went way further than you did.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work.
God damn. Who is this woman? And what did she do with the old school Kamala Harris? You want to talk about an upgrade?
I want to talk to you. Okay, I come first.
What? They want to know now.
We're there after two. So there's Kyle Kalinske shilling for Kamala Harris pre-election. We're going to keep moving here, power through to a segment where, I just did this whole bit about the end of late night television. And I think this is kind of parallel to that in a lot of ways. This is the Breakfast Club, Angela Rye attacking Jill Stein like she is a Democrat partisan. And this was a really interesting mask off moment for this particular media outlet. So let's watch some of this. Again, I'm not going to show a ton of it, but this is from episode number 71, which aired September 15th of 2024. So check this out. Let's get right into it. Let's clip real quick.
But here's one thing I think we can agree on. Either you win or lose this election. There's really no in between. Dr. Stein, in 2002, you ran for governor of Massachusetts and you lost. In 2004, you ran for state representative in Massachusetts and you lost. In 2006, you ran for secretary of the Commonwealth. You also lost. In 2010, you ran for governor again, this time against the first Black governor in Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. You lost. In 2012, you ran against this country's first Black president and you got just less than.
Just a quick pause here. I love how there's this like subtle thing here. First Black mayor, first Black president, first Black governor, whatever. You're a racist for running in these races kind of thing going on here with Angela Rye. But let's keep going.
0.5% of total votes cast. In 2016, you ran against Donald Trump and Hillary.
So if you were paying attention to, this is kind of a continuation, a little bit sharper of an attack than what AOC leveled against Jill Stein recently. Is just saying like, hey, you just show up every year to be a spoiler against the Democrats. You never win.
Clinton losing significantly with 1.4 million votes cast for you, but 0 electoral college votes, which I agree with y'all needs to be abolished. But 136 million people voted. And you lost that election as well. So I want to know what the pathway to victory is for you in 2024. It can't just be.
I'd like to provide a different frame.
Shut your mouth. Watch your fucking mouth.
I want to provide.
And I also.
Can I respond, please? May I respond? May I respond?
Go ahead.
Well, I would like to respond. This is the framing of the empire and the oligarchy and white supremacy and colonialism, which wants you to feel that resistance is futile. This is about voter blaming and voter shaming. Let me finish.
Voter blaming and voter shaming. She is 100% correct. I don't like, I'm not one of those people who's like anti-woke, who's like, oh yeah, like there's no such thing as like systemic racism. To me, while we're fighting for reparations and an improvement to our material quality of life, she's bragging about how well she and her bougie friends are doing. This is from 2020. I'm not impoverished. I have friends who are doing very well in this country.
I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. Us needing to all be lifted out of poverty. I'm not impoverished, and I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. And so I reject the notion that we constantly need to be talking about. I'm almost.
Yes, because she rejects the notion that this is a class thing, and she wants to she wants to dismiss that because she's doing well. So there she is, just flat out admitting it. Why? So there you go. There's Angela Rye attacking Jill Stein and Butch Ware on behalf of the establishment. Speaking of establishment hacks, there was a whole controversy earlier in the year. Controversy, I always slip and say, because I have this thing in my head where I want to say controversial. So I say controversy instead of controversy. That's a mistake that I'm, that's a flaw that I'm dealing with. But Dave Grohl, he recently got in trouble didn't get in trouble, but came out and announced that he'd had a child out of wedlock. But one of the things that gets lost in the shuffle, and this is something that I kind of found through internet sleuthing, is that Dave Grohl, much like Chuck D, works on behalf of the State Department. And I did a little bit of a piece on it. I'll try to jump around a little bit, but watch this. This is from episode number 72 that aired September 22nd of 2024. And the reason he has been in the news is because of adultery. So Dave Grohl came out and basically admitted your boy Antony Blinken is running, and Chuck D was recently called out for this. Now, granted, I think Chuck D should be a lot more ashamed of participating in something like this, given his militant history. Dave Grohl doesn't really have a militant history. Chuck D does, his entire fear of a black planet, and now he's working with the State Department. That is a bit of a conflict of interest. However, this is a very interesting little sidebar to take. And of course, I'm going to bring in my boy Blinken for you.
Keep on bombing lots of people. Keep on bombing lots of people.
So, just to kind of show you this little wormhole that I went down here. This is from the U.S. State Department.gov website, the Global Music Diplomacy Initiative. And this is what Dave Grohl was taking part in. But music, it gives voice to democratic ideals, the powerful and the powerless, across borders and beyond barriers, and to generations of citizens from all walks of life worldwide. Since the world-renowned composer Aaron Copland headed to South America during World War II, and the more widely known jazz ambassadors sang scat behind the Iron Curtain from the 1950s through the early 1970s, the United States called upon American musicians and artists to use music as a diplomatic tool to promote peace and democracy. Now the United States is elevating music even further through public-private partnerships with American companies and nonprofits to use music to meet the moment, convey American leadership globally, and create connections with people worldwide. So here's your boy Blinken. Obviously, someone who wanted to be a musician. There's Dave Grohl on stage at the musician Dave Grohl performing on stage during the launch of the Global Music Diplomacy Initiative. Who's this? This is hip hop artist Rakim. Oh wow, Rakim's in this shit. Here is jazz musician Herbie Hancock. Sweet. Who else we got here? Jamie Barton. I don't know who that is. They always are the most. All right, so I'm going to stop there. That's basically Dave Grohl, much like Chuck D, and Rakim is working with the State Department on their Global Music Ambassadors Initiative. What I get from this is that the State Department is giving these people money through grants or some kind of a NGO, the Global Music Initiative or whatever, like they do. And that's why Dave Grohl is involved in that program. So I'm going to show you one clip from the September 29th, 2024 episode 73. This one is John Bolton, and he's talking about why it's imperative that Trump be defeated for the sake of the latest war that he supports in Ukraine. So let's jump into this for a few minutes and we'll talk. And if you listen to, what we just read about Biden, he is a flat out neocon. And I'm going to show you, look at this. Here is this morning, John Bolton on CNN discussing Trump's recent meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. So basically what happened recently is Zelensky came begging for money and actually kind of did a photo op to help the Harris people in Pennsylvania. And, of course there was outrage. So he had to meet with Trump. And this clip just kind of summarizes everything in our political discourse right now so goddamn well. I want you to watch it, and then we're going to talk about it. You're going to, boy, are you going to love this. It's with show favorite, friend of the show,
Relationship, as
John
you know,
Bolton.
with President Putin, and I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have. Oh, I see. Yeah, but it takes two to tango. And we will. We're going to have a good meeting today, and I think the fact that we're even together today is a very good sign, and hopefully we'll have a good victory because the other side wins. I don't think you're going to have victories with anything, to be honest with you.
I mean, at points, Ambassador, it sounded like Trump was describing just kind of a dispute between two parties, not an invasion of another country. I mean, how do you think Zelensky heard Donald Trump?
So it's what's incredible to me is the bubble that these people have manufactured for themselves, because they have to pretend that everything in this conflict began in 2022 when Russia invaded and completely ignore the documented history of what happened before that. But let's keep going.
I'm saying for good relations, it takes two to tango.
Yeah, look. It is a fucking sad day when Trump is the smartest head in the room. That's the smartest thing anyone has said about this conflict on TV. It takes two to tango. Jesus Christ.
If people couldn't see how uncomfortable Zelensky looked in that picture, I don't know what else to say to describe it.
Good. Again, the bubble that these people have created around themselves, they see an uncomfortable Zelensky as like, oh my God, Trump made Zelensky uncomfortable. The rest of the country sees that as a good thing.
It reminded me of the picture of Zelensky and Trump together in September of 2019 when they had their first in-person meeting at the United Nations opening of the General Assembly in New York, when Zelensky looked just about as uncomfortable. I think everybody should understand, and particularly Republicans who hope that Trump will continue support for Ukraine if he wins, that is not going to happen. I think Trump is serious.
The Trump campaign should use this as an ad.
When he says he's going to try and cut a deal between Zelensky and Putin, and the terms of the deal, Senator Vance announced a few weeks ago. Russia keeps everything that it has. Ukraine says it won't go into NATO, and sweetness and light will break out. That's what's coming for Ukraine if Trump gets elected.
So why do you think he met with?
This cracker ass Kentucky Fried Chicken salesman thinks that we see that as a bad thing. Did you hear what he said? He's going to make a deal. How is that a bad thing? And what's even crazier about this is this guy is on the same side as the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, Dick Cheney, all these clowns, absolute clowns, shilling for failed policy. That's one of the reasons I showed you that Oprah clip with Dan Rather at the beginning, just to remind you that all these clowns are still in the debate as if their voices should be taken seriously. John Bolton is an absolute motherfucking clown who should never be listened to again, ever, in American foreign policy debates. But here he is on CNN.
Zelensky today.
I think for political reasons. I think he knew that obviously Zelensky had been in Washington. He had met with President Biden. He had met with Vice President Harris. I think it's designed to calm the nerves of some Republicans who despise Trump and don't want to vote for him, but are afraid of the radicalism of the Democratic Party, and they're.
I love that they can say this shit with a straight face. Here I am advocating for Kamala Harris, but we're concerned about the radicalism of the Democratic Party. The radicalism of the right-wing radicalism, the arming of Israel and Ukraine in endless proxy wars, the complete neoconization. Is that the extremism that you're talking about? No, it's not. Of course, it's people protesting at colleges against, their tuition money going to endless war.
Rationalizing in their own minds, surely Trump won't sell out Ukraine, so that the
sell out Ukraine again. Like, that's why the MAGA thing is so effective, because this guy cares more about Ukraine than he cares about the United States, and we're going to bring some receipts on that.
This is the kind of picture that helps convince them that indeed Trump won't be so bad. I just like to break that bubble, because I think it's in terms of American support for Ukraine, if Trump wins, I think it's toast.
When Trump said today that Putin wants this war,
again, the Trump campaign should just take this footage and run it as an ad.
Also stopped. I mean, is that your view of what the Russian leader wants?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He wants it stopped as soon as he can. It just get a little bit more ground, he'll be ready to go. Look, I think Putin knows that he has, although he's doubled the.
Listen to what this guy says before we switch over to someone who actually has a spine.
The amount of territory in Ukraine that Russia controls since 2014, they have paid a high price for it. He'd like to draw a line under this so he can help recover the Russian economy, convince the Europeans to buy natural gas from Russia again, and re-equip and retrain his army so that he can go after Ukraine again in a few years. And that is exactly what he will do if there's a ceasefire along the lines Trump is talking about.
This is an unapologetic neocon who has spent years and years shilling for failed policy, running failed policy, bankrupting the country, causing infinite amounts of blowback towards us. The fact that this guy is part of the debate still is a sign of what's wrong with the United States. There's no accountability. People like this guy should be laughed out of the room. He should not be on TV talking about, with any authority whatsoever, about foreign policy. But here he is, pretending that his opinion is valid. So let's listen to someone who actually will tell you the truth about what's going on. I'm going to stop right there with the John Bolton thing, but I do want to show you from this morning. Apparently, Zelensky just did the Lex Friedman podcast, and I know you're all very excited about that. Candace Owens, me and the homie after he just committed an ethnic cleansing of Ukrainian Christians. So dope. Lex Friedman here. I had a great conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky. Podcast episode should be out Monday, 3+ hours. I know you can't wait for that. I know I can't. I'm sure it's captivating, as Lex Friedman's podcasts always are. Here's Auntie Warren. Lex is so pathetic. Yes, he is. And my stream today, I had promised myself I was not going to go over 2 hours, but here I am at 2 hours and 20 minutes. So we're going to end on a high note today with a clip from October 13th. Well, sorry, actually October 6th. And this is probably one of my favorite protests of the year, probably one of my favorite clips of the year too. And this is Jose Vega going after Paul Krugman, because Paul Krugman, I have one of his books on my shelf. He's one of those guys who just, he's an apologist for the establishment. He's a guy who lives in the Bahamas a large portion of the year. And let's just enjoy, as kind of the crescendo to my 2024 recap. I'm going to stop here in October. A lot of what we covered in November and December was election, post-election, liberal meltdowns, and that kind of thing. So I want to end on a high note here with this clip of Jose Vega sticking it to Paul Krugman. Enjoy. Have gone viral. this is just like, there's nothing more brunch liberal than a take like that. And it's just, these people don't realize that it illustrates how stupid they are. But my favorite part of all of this is the community note that it got. So let's read this. Readers added context. It was a political candidate in the Bronx stating their opinion and never mentioned Trump. While he said Helene, he also referenced his own area and its issues. And that is Jose for you. So I want to show you. I'm just going to play the clip because I could watch this thing 1,000 times. There's so many. It's just so goddamn good. Hold on. Enjoy.
Nobel Prize winning economist here to tell us how great the economist. Nobel Prize winning economist here to tell us how great the economy is. I certainly wonder how the residents of Asheville, North Carolina must be feeling right now with no access to power or water or communication with the outside world. I wonder how enthusiastic they are about the economy right.
So the point he's making here too, I love that Paul Krugman described that as like it's like a Trump thing to point out that if the economy is so great, why is our response to a crisis like this not right on time and snappy, and why aren't we just dumping billions into these affected areas like we do into these proxy wars? That's the kind of stuff that Paul Krugman, Trump is such a great scapegoat for avoiding those types of conversations. There's like Trump bad, Trump lies.
Right now, I wonder how enthusiastic the residents of the South Bronx must be feeling about the economy. Hey, maybe North Carolina should rename itself Israel so it'll get $20 billion in aid. Or maybe Ukraine so it can get $300 billion in aid. Maybe the South Bronx should do the same thing. I mean, I'm sure the economy is great for smug liberals like yourself who make $5 million and are worth $5 million. I'm sure the economy must be great for all you smug journalists, economists. All of you must be having a great time with the economy when most people can't even pay for basic necessities. For people
What's
who are
this jackass
getting
doing? This guy in front of him like, oh.
evicted because they can't pay their rent. Because over in the South Bronx, just a few miles away from here, there are portions of buildings that are literally collapsing. And I'm supposed to give a shit about the stock market. You want to know why the presidential election is tied right now? Because our money is being sent to Israel and Ukraine so that they can continue to bomb innocent women and children. You think that's a great economy? I'm sure Israel.
One of my favorite things about this video is the shocked look on these people's faces. I mean, you can't see it that well, but they've never heard anything like this. They all live in MSNBC bubble.
With their free healthcare is having a great time with American taxpayer money. Hey, is anyone here going to talk about the fact that we could be in war with Iran in a few days? Or do we need to focus on the S&P 500? Is that what actually matters? The S&P 500, when most people may not even be alive here in a few days just because we're on the verge of nuclear war. Hey, listen to me, Mr. Krugman. Your degree is worthless. You might as well use it as paperweight because it means nothing. I hope you enjoy the dead children that the economy is powering. Our economy is definitely very powerful right now. All that stock market money goes to the military complex so that more innocent women and children are dead. And fuck off with the New York Times, the liberal apologists for war and genocide. You all fucking suck. People need to wake up right now, and we need to have peace. We can work with China. We can work with Russia. We don't need to start war with Iran. All right, I'm good. We're good.
All right, I'm good. Absolutely beautiful. It doesn't get much better than that. Jose Vega, probably I would nominate for Hero of the Year based on that clip alone. People that people like Paul Krugman and people that would go to a Paul Krugman speaking event need to hear those things because they're not going to hear them anywhere else in the insulated algorithmic bubble that they all live in. So that was probably that is my crescendo for the 2024 year in review. I showed you a lot of stuff that built up to the election. The Democrats lost, which they deserved to lose. And, you see with all these clips I played for you of Nick Cruz, for example, pointing out how militaristic and neocon Kamala's speech was. That's why they lost. They deserved to lose. And at least with the, I'm not even going to argue that Trump is going to be better on those particular issues, but there's a chance. And there was no chance with the Democrats. We were going to see the continuation of an Obama style, let's pat ourselves on the back while we bomb the shit out of people because we have a woman of color who's our president now, who's as empty of a vessel as the senile guy we have right now, And so at least with someone like Trump, there's a bit of a wild card. So we'll give it that. And I think that, people like Keaton and Nick and from RBN and Jimmy Dore and, a lot of people on the right, were right to point this out. And, we're going to see where it goes. But like I said before, I see a lot of people in my space taking a victory lap and spiking the football like, fucking MAGA, you guys are so dumb. Ha ha, Trump ain't gonna. He's not even in the office yet. And so I take a little bit of issue with this because you're basically believing reports from the same people who, we just went through a year's worth of documentation, lied through their teeth about everything, including the mental competence of the current president. So I would take these reports about what Trump's going to do and what his nominees are with a grain of salt. I'll believe it when the rubber meets the road after January 20th. That's when you're really going to start to see me going hard on the Trump administration, because that's when they're actually going to be responsible for the things that are going on in the country. Right now, it's kind of like after, Hillary lost to Trump, where the Obama administration just scrambled. And if you go back and look at some of the stuff that they put in place, they removed the Smith-Mundt Act so that they could use, propaganda on people. And I mean, Claire Danes, that interview with Claire Danes and on Colbert, where she kind of admits that the security state and the deep state is partnering with journalists post-Trump election. You all this stuff has kind of come together now in this amalgamation of, just shit. So we'll see what happens. That's my take right now. I didn't vote, so I don't really have a horse in the race, but we're going to see what happens. There's I've got people in the comments saying it's like Trump bombed Iran. Yeah, because John Bolton was on his staff. So they have talked about how, they were a little bit torn during the first Trump presidency because he didn't think he was going to win. And then all of a sudden he had to hire a bunch of people from, deep state, permanent Washington to work for his campaign. So I think this second term is going to be interesting to watch. I'm going to be here with you for all of it. And I thank you for tuning in to my show. Check out, if you haven't seen my The Rise and Fall of Late Night Television yet. That's a video I actually put some time and thought into. I mean, I put time and thought into all this, and sometimes I just, blabber like a fucker. But hey, I love you guys jumping in the comments, holding me accountable, telling me where I'm wrong, or just sharing your opinions. And you're going to see a lot more of me in 2025, like it or not. So on that note, I think it's time to close out. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you all out there on the internet. Happy New Year, and peace be with you.